After taking care of people for 15 years, I've realized that the people that are at most compromised for injury are people that are desk jockeys. Hello and welcome to the Weaponized Body Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Hewitt, and I'm coming to you live from my upstairs nook. And as you can see, for those of you who have visual on me from the YouTube page, I am bald. So I managed to lose all my hair over our February vacation. And it was because I made a special pit stop on from my Florida vacation. I left my family at Magic Kingdom and I took off for Colombia for 3 days. And I did some hair restoration. So check it out. For those of you that can't see, I've been balding on the crown of my head for the last at least 7, 8, 9 years. And I just got to the point where it had been on a body goal of mine for at least 2 years now that I wanted to try this hair restoration game. And, I don't look too horrible bald, but when I have hair, I know I'm my biggest critic, and most of us are. I could just really notice in videos and in pictures that, like, from the front, everything looks cool. And then I dip my head down or turn to the side and you can see there's just like a big patch missing from the forest. So I decided to do this hair restoration, and they grafted 3,300 grafts from the side and the back of my head to the top. And I'm going to go into some reasons I chose Colombia. I'll do this on another episode, but I think hair loss is going to be, an interesting episode in the future. I think hair restoration and hair loss is a big thing when it comes to like regenerative medicine and progressive, like aesthetic type of stuff, proactive type of stuff that is coming out these days. So anyways, that's why I look like I just got out of jail. Anyways, so I have a special episode for you today. This is an episode that's near and dear to my heart. It is a movement episode. It is titled The Silent Killer, and it's not what you think. This episode may sound pretty mundane and not very interesting, but as I dig into this, you're going to find that there's some really startling things about this silent killer. And this silent killer is known as sitting. So one thing we can all agree on, I think, is that our society today sits way too much. I always joke with my patients that if we were designed to sit all day, God would have put 4 legs on our butt. Sitting is also termed the new smoking, and you'll find out why during this episode. And it has, of course, it sounds bad for your health, which is, of course, the theme, but you'll find out why it's comparative to this smoking problem, which is obviously like definitely a choice that we make. Whether you're locked into an office chair for 8 hours a day or you're on your feet all day, the consequences are severe. So such as chronic pain, metabolic dysfunction, and early death. So don't worry, I'm not going to leave you, hanging in a bad place with this episode. We're just going to dig into some of the detriments of sitting, and then we're going to come out on the other side on how to undo the damage. And if you're young enough, how to get proactive about this problem, because let's agree on one thing, that we are completely engineering activity out of all of our daily lives. Take COVID, for example, like we were able to operate as a planet without even having to go out of our house. We had food delivery, we could work from home, Zoom school, everything was done on location. You barely had to move your body all day long. And we're finding out that this is a massive, massive problem, not just from a physical standpoint, but also a metabolic standpoint and a neurological standpoint. So let's dig into this. So the first part, we're going to talk about how much an average adult spends sitting. Now, if you had to guess, how long does the average adult spend sitting? What would you say? Nope, it's not 6 hours. Nope, it's not 8 hours. It's actually 9 to 12 hours. If you think about that, the average person sleeps maybe 6-7 hours. We're talking you're only up and moving like 5 or 6 hours of the day. You're spending the other 2/3 sitting on your butt on your keister. And you have to consider that you're not just sitting when you're at your workplace. You're probably sitting in your car. You're probably sitting when you're at home on the couch, or at the dinner table or breakfast table. And of course, at night, you're pretty motionless. They found that even if you train, so even if you're someone who's active and works out, it does not undo all the detriments of sitting. I used to think that you could sit all day and still exercise and undo all the damage. But after taking care of people for 15 years, I've realized that the people that are at most compromised for injury are people that are desk jockeys, that are motionless and sit all day. And then they try to go do something like CrossFit, or they try to do something like, a tough leg day at the gym. And what's happening there is your tissues have been deformed and completely sedentary all day. And then you try to elicit a demand of these tissues that is just like such a contrast from what you've been doing with it all day. Even if you warmed up properly, just the contrast and the 180 you're taking that tissue with just creates a big rat's nest. It's a huge risk for an injury. So an hour a day at the gym does not ease 10 hours of chair sitting. And this was discovered in the Journal of American Medical Association of Cardiology in 2017. Sitting all day isn't a solution either. Or sorry, I misspoke. Standing all day isn't a solution either. So I used to espouse to patients that, hey, make sure you get a standing desk. If you're at a desk job, you work from home or at an office space, make sure you have a standing option. Now, I still make this recommendation to patients. However, it is not a substitute for sitting all day. You can do almost as much damage standing motionless all day as you do sitting all day long. So, and this was, discovered, for example, there's a Scandinavian Journal of Work Environment and Health. They found that excessive standing can cause back pain, even things like varicose veins, cardiovascular stress. Never mind, they didn't even study the neurological effects of not moving your body all day. Of course, this creates fatigue. It doesn't stimulate brain-derived neurotropic factors, so things like fertilizer for your brain that movement stimulates, that makes learning and information gathering more effective and sticky, etc. So sedentary lifestyles are actually linked to over 35 chronic diseases. We'd be here for a while to try to name 35 chronic illnesses, but we know the top 4 are in there: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and neurodegenerative diseases. So those are absolutely, the top 4 killers in the country. And it's, standing and sitting all day is linked to all 4 of those. So you want to right now add some years to your life and make sure you're preventing chronic illness. Is make sure you're not sitting for more than, half that time. Like six hours a day is pushing it. So if you're sitting for more than 6 hours a day, that increases your early death risk by 19%. So, and this has been shown over and over and over by the research articles. Get this, every hour spent sitting after the age of 25 shortens your life expectancy by 22 minutes. So do the math. It's more than smoking a cigarette, right? Sitting for an hour is worse than smoking 1 cigarette. That's why they say sitting is the new smoking, okay? It takes years off the end of your life. It's not that it's related to all these illnesses and whatnot, but it is because it takes years off the end of your lifespan, which nobody wants that. So what does sitting and standing do to your body? Well, first of all, as a chiropractor, I would be remiss to not highlight and make sure that everybody understands the structural damage that sitting does. Most of us understand, like, logically that if you're sitting in this position all day, which I'm sitting right now, it shortens up. So your torso is at a 90-degree angle to your hip flex, to your femurs, right? So in other words, your hip flexors are shortened. What this shortened tissue does, if it's there for a prolonged period, it gets weak. Weak muscles get tight. Tight muscles set you up for injury. Now, a lot of people don't realize your hip flexors are attached to your pelvis and your spine. The biggest problem in our country when it comes to pain is back pain. One of the major contributors to back pain is prolonged sitting. Shortened hip flexors and just sitting on your keister with bad posture all day leads to that. Poor mobility, not to mention hip and knee pain, etc. So one of the biggest issues with that sitting position too is that it compresses your spinal discs. Now, if you know anything about spinal anatomy, you have your vertebrae, which are the blocks of bone in your, let's just take your low back, for example. And the blocks sit one on top of another, and they're attached in the back with things called facet joints. Those are, what creates and helps with motion and movement. And that's where you feel at the end of those, that segment, you feel that spiny, what's called spinous process. That's that bony prominence you can feel. In between the bones, there's also something called a disc, a spinal disc, and it's made of what's called fibrocartilage. So the fibrocartilage is gelatinous, it's dynamic. Yes, it does absorb shock, but it also creates beautiful space between the vertebrae to allow the nerves to have a nice channel from your spinal cord that exits each spinal segment to go to your tissues, organs, organ systems. When you're sitting when you're sitting all day, and the vast majority of people do not sit with optimal posture. Okay, sitting with optimal posture, your low back is in a neutral position. Okay, what's maintained is something called your lordotic curve. It's a curvature in your low back that you want to maintain because that's where optimal shock absorption and optimal posture sits, where all your tissues and your ligaments and tendons and everything are, stacked. What happens is we sit with this poor posture where we end up rounding, right? So we lose the lordotic curve in our low back, and we actually sit with a curvature reversal in our low back, which creates a tremendous amount of pressure in our low back. The reason we're able to do that comfortably is because we sit in these cushy office chairs. You're able to, round your low back and sit comfortably in that office chair or couch or car seat. And what happens is you can sit comfortably like that for a while and even for years. But eventually you try to do something athletic. Okay, you try to bend over, pick up a pencil, boom, that low back disc blows up. And it wasn't that motion or movement that was the problem. It was the cumulative degenerative activity called sitting that weakened those tissues. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So it compresses those spinal discs and leads to lower back pain. And that low back pain can come from the inactivity of the joints, but also the degenerative change and the sensitization of the disc tissue, the discal tissue that actually degenerates. So metabolic and cardiovascular damage. Let's talk about that as number 2. So sitting, one of the things that it does is it just like, when you're not moving, you're not stimulating any sort of demand for fuel in addition to whatever it takes your body to just run your metabolic functions in your brain. One of the beautiful things about walking is that walking actually reduces your insulin, it increases your insulin sensitivity. So in other words, your body doesn't have to make as much hormone to use sugars in your body. So when you're sitting, it reduces that glucose metabolism by, get this, like 40% in just a day. So you do that day after day after day after day. Sitting absolutely contributes to insulin resistance, therefore eventually a diabetic condition. The other thing too is that it increases the risk, of type 2 diabetes, of course, but blood flow slows down. When you're not moving your body, you're not pumping blood through your extremities. Your heart is just kind of sitting at the same heartbeat all day long, aside from the stressful phone calls you get and the caffeine bumps you get. So the blood flow does not, pump through your extremities like your legs and your arms and all those inactive muscles. And what it does is it leads to higher stroke risk. They found this in the Journal of Stroke. Brain fog and mental decline. This is a big one. A lot of people don't realize that the simple reason you feel like shit when you sit at your desk, you have headache and eye strain, you feel like garbage, you're probably just not doing two very simple things. You're not drinking enough water, and you're probably just sitting for prolonged periods. You're sitting for too long. It's not normal. It's not natural. Your body has no adaptive skills to be able to sit for long periods without movement. It basically reduces your blood flow to your brain. So we know that sitting reduces your blood flow in general, but it also reduces blood flow to your brain, which causes literal cognitive decline. And they found this in like the Journal of Applied Physiology, amongst other journals, even as recent as the last couple of years. It increases depression and anxiety. I always say, listen, if I was to try to give somebody depression and anxiety, here's what I would do. And I almost guarantee you that I could give somebody depression and anxiety within 2 weeks. Here's the program I would prescribe. I would make sure that they ate processed foods, stuff that's kind of loaded with carbohydrates and, simple sugars. I would make sure that, their beverage choices is minimal water, ample, things like coffee and juices and soda pops and stuff like that. I would make sure that they are staring at a computer screen or a blue light or just like unnatural type of like environment, sitting under fluorescent lights all day. I would make sure I put them in a stressful environment, right? Like a workplace or whatnot. And I would make sure that they didn't move their body. I would make sure that they moved as little as possible. Lo and behold, I guarantee you give somebody that plan, they have anxiety and depression within a month. I say even sooner, within a couple of weeks. Now, if that sounds like some people it's and they have depression and anxiety, it's because literally they're doing the prescription for how to get depression and anxiety. Now, hear me out. I'm not minimizing clinical depression or literal anxiety and panic attacks. Those are real problems, I understand. But here's the thing. If you're not moving your body, eating a whole food, protein-based, plant-based diet, you're not doing renewal activities like sleep. Oh, I forgot sleep, right? I make sure people slept like crap too. So you're not sleeping properly, okay? You're not moving your body routinely. You're not drinking water. Like you are just asking for any type of problem across the spectrum. So movement is a massive piece of that. And what are we doing when we're not moving? Well, we're sitting, right? So this is why sitting increases depression and anxiety across the board. They found this in all kinds of mental health journals. You probably even heard that exercise alone outperforms most SSRI and most type of depression psychotropic meds. Okay, there's lots of studies out there that show that you get somebody to do a regular routine exercise program, it outperforms these drugs every time. So let's talk about solutions, guys. We've agitated the problem enough. I told you about all the shit that goes wrong. You don't move your body enough and you're sitting too much. And I dare you to try to calculate how much did you truthfully sit during a day. Okay. Make sure you count home time, couch time, car time, office time, etc. I can't tell you how many consultations I do with like, oh yeah, I'm active. I move around all day. I'm like, okay, well, let's start tracking your steps. And these people are getting like 6,000 steps a day, which is pathetic, right? Our ancestors, that would have been laughable. That would have been what they did before breakfast. Anyways, fighting back and making sure that you have a battle plan of solutions. So here's my rule. I teach this to patients. The 35 rule or the 61 rule. The 35 rule is you move around 5 minutes for every 30 minutes that you sit, minimum. Or every hour that you sit, you move around for 10 minutes. Okay? Non-negotiable. Now, you can make sure that you are moving your body even more than prescribed by doing something like a treadmill desk, which is cool. That's like a nice workplace hack. And I've never done the treadmill desk. There's like bike desks too, which are pretty cool. I mean, if you're moving your body and doing stuff and you can stay productive, power to you. I think I would find it difficult to stay productive. But listen, if you're doing meetings and Zoom calls, all day long, you could be moving your body. In fact, I think better on my feet than sitting still. So remember that rule, 35 or 61. okay? Or it should be 60-10, right? 5 minutes of movement every 30 minutes of sitting, or 10 minutes of movement every 60 minutes of sitting or standing. Now, here's something cool is that they found like walking is so powerful. Even 2 minutes of walking after meals reduces your blood sugar by 30%. So here's my rule number 2 is that every meal that you eat, make sure you walk for 10 minutes after. Okay. You have time for this. Trust me. You can walk before breakfast or walk after breakfast. Okay. You can even eat breakfast, sit in your car, drive to work, and then make sure you're walking for 10 minutes before you enter the building. Okay. Show up to work 10 minutes early. At lunch, walk for at least 10 minutes. You probably have more time at lunch break. Okay. Walk 15 to 20 minutes. And then take your family for a walk after dinner or before dinner. Like bang out 3 of those walks. Listen, if you did 3 10-minute walks in a day, that's 30 minutes of walking. You've just moved your body more than 75% of people in this country called the United States of America. Believe it or not, it's insane. But when you think about it, like 74% of Americans are overweight. Over 40% of Americans are obese. Okay, not that movement is the only problem, but it's a big part of the problem is we do not move our bodies enough. So the power of walking. Okay. Now those 2-minute and 10-minute breaks you're taking during the day, I'm a big fan of having like an office routine. I love to give out, I call them like protocols, like staying fit while you sit, weaponized body workstation, workouts. And literally we're talking 5 minutes of stuff. All you need is an assisted pull-up band, a hip circle, or none of the above. You just need body weight. Okay. And there's upper and lower body exercises that are so friggin' simple. A caveman could do it, right? We're talking squats, lunges, bridges. We're talking pull-aparts and face pulls or wall angels. We're talking Supermans. I mean, stuff you need no equipment for. People will think you're nuts at the office, but who cares, right? Let them get the cancer, diabetes, depression, anxiety, neurodegenerative disease, and heart disease. So you can make sure that you're building fitness while you sit. Stay fit while you sit. So you can either walk every 30 minutes or hour, or you could do one of these little, workstation workouts, which I'm a big fan of. Now, workstation hacks. I touched a little bit on like the treadmill desk, which is cool. You can even get like desk bikes. So that's a nice hack. Not a luxury that everybody has the ability to afford, but everyone can probably figure out how to make their desk into a standing desk. So I am not opposed to standing desks. I want you to know that you can sit too much and stand too much. Neither of them are great for your spine or your posture or your mechanics or your metabolic health or your neurological health. However, you want to be able to have the option to change your posture. Okay, let me say that again. You want to make sure you have the option to change your posture from a sit to stand position. That way you're changing how gravity interacts with your body. You're changing, your tissue lengths. Make sure that you're alternating postures. Okay. I tell people to sit, stand, move around, sit, stand, move around, and just like become completely, I guess, ADD all day long, which isn't massively productive, but you'll find a way. Okay. So, those are my kind of biggest hacks. Here's the other hack. The last one, number 5, I would say that make sure you're drinking. I mean, it's tough. Everybody needs a different amount of water, but listen, if you have, like I have this guy, it's a 30-ounce bottle next to me all day long. If I'm diligent and keep this next to me, I will drink 4 of these a day by 7 o'clock, which is a gallon. I don't think everybody needs a gallon, but most people probably need 80 to 100 ounces. So listen, I think that if you're drinking a liter of water before noon, that's pretty good. If you're drinking a liter of water afternoon and a liter of water in the evening. If you drink more water, you'll have to get up to go to the bathroom. So it will force you to make sure you're moving around, going to the bathroom if you forget to stand up. There's also wearables that have nice reminders. The Apple Watches, Garmin watches and whatnot. They tell you to stand up if you've been sitting too long. You can set timers. There's apps. There's all kinds of different like fun hacks. So I hope that most people take away from this that like you probably are sitting too much. If you're chronically injured, it's probably because you're sitting too much. If there's chronic health diseases in your family, like heart disease, cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, and stroke, it's probably because they sat too much. Okay. Not everything is genetic. So the simplest friggin' thing you can do to make sure that you're living as long as possible, as functional as possible, you're hurting yourself as little as possible, keeping your tissues and your body as healthy as possible, is just these really, really simple habits, like minimize your sitting. Minimize your sitting and move your body as much as you can throughout the day. Okay, simple as that. So I hope you got some good stuff from this podcast today, my friends. Like, share, subscribe. Give me some feedback. I'd love to know more about what you guys think of these podcasts. As you know, I alternate between metabolic health, right, which ranges everything from nutrition to sleep to water intake and supplements, and hormone health and things like that, to movement, as this podcast was, right? So strength and conditioning, everyday movements and habits and postures and positions and activities. And lastly, of course, is mindset, which is a very undercover, huge thing that we need to consider when we talk about weaponizing our body. So metabolic movement mindset. And I love to every month try to interview a resident expert in one of those fields. So I hope you've been liking the interviews. I hope you've been loving the podcasts. Please give me some feedback, like, share, subscribe. Love you guys. See you next week.